Hey, what's up everybody? My name is Dylan Kotecki and I'm joined by Dan Harlacher.
Hi everyone.
And today we're incredibly excited to announce the all-new ON1 Photo RAW 2025 with 10 brand new features that we're going to dive into in this demonstration.
All right, well, let's go. We'll dig right in here. The first new feature we want to talk about is the new generative AI tools that are inside of Photo RAW 2025. We can use these for removing distractions, doing difficult retouching, or for extending the canvas in your photo. Generative AI is a game changer. It's a totally different way of generating new pixels inside of your photo. We're going to start off and show you how to use it with the generative eraser tool to remove a distraction. So I've opened a photo here into Edit. To find the generative eraser, it's going to live in the retouch tool group. And if I select the little drop down, right there is the generative eraser. The way this works is we're going to mark up an entire object within the photo and then we're going to tell it to generate. So in this case, I've got this gal in the background who's kind of a little bit of a photo bomber. So I'm just going to paint over her. I want to paint over all of her. It's important to get all of her in one shot because the tool is so smart that if you leave part of her behind, it's going to try to put a person back in because it sees that part of a person was there. So I'm going to make sure I get her body, her leg, and even this other little piece of a leg right over here inside of the arm. When I'm ready, hit the green Generate button.
Wow.
And there you go.
That was perfect.
Yeah. Look at that. Perfect. That would have taken forever to do with the old-fashioned manual tools like a clone stamp. The cool thing is you can use it multiple times within that same session as well. So let's say I want to get rid of the little line from the volleyball court here. I'm just going to paint those areas out as well. I'm just clicking and shift clicking because these are nice straight lines. And then I'll hit Generate again.
Yeah, really good. You cleaned up the beach.
I know, look at that. Now, let's say it didn't do a good job. I can always undo. So if I use the undo command, it's going to put the last strokes back on, and I can hit the Generate button again. There might be times where you need to retry once or twice to get the results you want. It's going to generate different content every time.
Perfect.
That still looks good. Now you notice when I hit the Done button up here, it has created a new layer with my generative AI results. Because it can create new content every time you use it, it's really like creating a new photo. So we're going to store those results as a new layer on top of the original. That's going to create a layered on photo in your photo archive. All right, let me show you on another photo. So in this example, I've got some ugly dumpsters in this alley that I want to get rid of. So again, grab the perfect eraser, grab the generative eraser. I'm going to retrain myself. And we're just going to paint over those dumpsters.
Can you paint over a little bit of the person? Does it really matter too much?
Doesn't really matter. So you notice how I actually got inside of his shirt a little bit? That's okay. It's going to see the rest of the shirt. It's going to complete the line for you. That's something generative AI is really good at, are completing lines. So it's a very handy tool.
So it's identified the person.
Yep. It knows the person's there. It's not going to like make a big hole in their arm or anything. All right. We'll hit the green Generate button. Nice. And there we go. It filled it in. Nice, clean, matching sidewalk, matching building. You'd never know those dumpsters were there before. And again, when we're ready, we'll just hit the Done button at the top. Now, before we do that, I want to talk about two important things when using generative eraser or the generative crop tool we'll show you in a minute. The first one is there's a little I button right here. This is going to open up an information dialog that's going to walk you through how to get the best results. It's very powerful, but it can be a little finicky at times. So you want to make sure that you read this dialogue, especially watching the tips at the bottom for how to get the best results with generative AI. The other thing is there's two different ways to use generative AI within the app. One is using a local model that's performed on the GPU on your computer. If you have a powerful GPU that's separate from your central processing unit, you can totally use that. Or if you're using like an Apple Silicon, an M1, M2, M3, those all work fine as well. If you have an Intel integrated graphics, those aren't strong enough to run that local model. And even on some older hardware that's 4 or 5 years old, it might be kind of slow to generate. So in those cases, you can also use the Stability AI option as well. And you choose that right up here in the gear menu. You can choose between the local generative AI or the Stability AI option. If you use the Stability AI option, you're going to need to create an account at Stability's website and purchase credits. And each time you use the tool, it's going to debit your credits for use. It's a couple cents each time you use it to generate these results. They tend to be a little bit faster and maybe a little bit higher quality than doing it on the local model, just because they have big giant servers in the cloud that can use more complex models than what can run on your local computer. All right, let's go talk about extending your canvas to make the photo larger. So let me grab a different photo here. All right, so what we want to do is we want to extend the canvas out. You notice how it's actually chopped off his foot a little bit here, and they're kind of tight within the photo. So let's extend the canvas. But before we do that, let's get rid of these annoying people in the background. I'm going to use that same generative eraser tool that we were using before. And now I'm just going to paint over the stuff in the background that's annoying. I got some people. I got looks like a baby stroller.
It's rare to find a pumpkin patch with no people.
It's pretty impossible, especially in the fall.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
there we go. All right, so we'll paint those guys out, and I'm going to hit the generate button. There we go. Now, like magic,
Nice.
they're in a beautiful fall foresty scene with lots of pumpkins instead. Much better. Now, let's use the crop tool. With the crop tool, I want to make sure I pick the aspect ratio that I need for what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make a 24 by 30 inch print, so I need to pick the aspect ratio that matches. That happens to be the 4 by 5 or the 8 by 10 aspect ratio. And then under canvas extension, I can choose between the two different options, either the stability AI option or the local generative AI option. The last one we were using stability. This time let's use the generative AI option. This is done locally on my machine. Then I'm just going to grab these sides. I'm just going to pull it out. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we can see what this is going to look like. There we go. So now it's going to fill in the top, it's going to fill in the bottom. That way I have more room within my photo. So I'm just going to hit the done button here. And bam, there we go. Look how it extended that canvas. It completed his shoe. Everything looks realistic. Yep, put in new pumpkins in the foreground. I got sure the depth of field was right. So they were shallow depth of field in the foreground to match the other ones. Looks great.
Let's check out the before.
That would have been pretty much impossible.
I want to see that before and after.
Let's take a look at the before and after here. I'll just go to my history here, and we'll go back to the original. See, that's where we started, right there. We ended up with that. That's a pretty big difference, isn't it?
Awesome, Dan. Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah. So, Dylan, you've been using these features for a couple months now as we've been working on them in-house and everything. Why don't you tell people what you think you use it for the most?
I think I use it the most for removing distractions, because taking photographs now these days, there's constantly distractions, whether it be a person, a building in a foreground you don't want, you know, whatever it may be. It's really incredibly easy to just dive in there, paint over it, and immediately get rid of it. And I also like it for extending crops, just like we did there, especially in portraiture. You know, you may capture an image and it's a little bit too tight on the person, or you wanted a little bit more. You could even take a vertical image and you could turn it into a horizontal photograph. Or let's say wildlife, you know, you're capturing a bird that's flying out of the frame and you clip the wing or whatever, you can just extend the canvas and it'll immediately fill those pixels in.
Yeah, I think you had an example of that. I thought it was great, because how often do you get that when you're shooting something in motion or sports, something gets cut off, you don't mean it to. It's a great way to fix that.
Add in those pixels, it's like magic. It's absolute magic.
I found it really handy for the really tough retouching stuff. So not necessarily moving a distraction in the background, but actually something in the foreground. Like if you do retouching of faces, removing things like braces or glasses reflections, things like that. It makes those things way easier than doing it all manually.
So. Yeah, it's absolutely magic.
Now, speaking of distractions, there's actually 2 more AI technologies that we've added into Photo RAW 2025 to help you reduce common distractions. So let me show you where you're going to access those. The first one is for removing sensor dust. So you notice when you change the lens on your camera, you might get dust on the sensor, and it can be hard to clean that off manually. Or you might not know until after the shot's there.
That's me. That's me. I'm like, oh no. Get back to the editing room and there's tons of dust spots.
Exactly. So let's zoom in and I'll show you on this photo. So if I zoom in, you can see that sensor dust. You get those little diffuse dark spots. Sometimes there'll be little fibers or little hairs, depending on your photo. This photo has a bunch of those objectionable little dust spots in the sky. They would just take forever to go through and manually retouch those guys out. But now we can do it automatically. So go to that same retouching tool group. And this time you're going to go back to the trusty perfect eraser. And in the tool options bar, you'll notice there's 2 new buttons up there. One for reduce dust and one for reduce power lines. All you do is just press reduce dust. And there you go, like magic. It has found all the dust in the photo and removed it. Let's take a look at before and after again. There's before and after. And it's not just the dust in the sky, it's even the dust in the building. So if I pan up here and I turn it off, you'll see there's the dust in the sky, but down here in this corner, there's also dust on the building. It's gonna remove those as well. Now that was a pretty easy photo. Let's take a look at a pretty hard photo instead. So, you know how you mentioned sometimes you don't know? I had a camera, an old Canon 5D Mark II. Well, the little thing that vibrates the chip broke on it, so it was always just dirty. So this photo, if you look at it, is just a train wreck. You know, it has dust everywhere. It's got even little like fibers and stuff. So, and I had a whole several months where all my photos had this same dust on it. So watch how this works now. So I'll go back to that perfect eraser. I'll hit reduce dust. And there you go.
Voila.
Bam. That saved me like a half an hour of having to go through and retouch all that stuff manually. Now, there might be cases where it doesn't get rid of everything. You could then, you're already in the perfect eraser. You can just go get those other little spots that it might not get. Everything AI is going to help you, but it's not perfect. It's not a bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
That's a horrible analogy. It's not bulletproof. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It may need a little, you may need a little, do something.
Add a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other one in here is for reducing power lines or wires within a photo. So let me find a photo that has some power lines in it. Here's a good example. And I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see. And look, it's got these black wires that run all the way through the photo.
Those are very distracting.
Very distracting, and they're a pain in the butt to get rid of because they're long. And they're not always perfectly straight either. So it's not like you can just do the old click, shift, click trick to get rid of them. So we'll go back to our perfect eraser. All right, here. And this time we'll use the reduce power lines button instead. So now it'll detect those power lines in the sky and bam, they're gone, just like that.
That is awesome.
It's pretty slick, isn't it?
That is really awesome.
Here, I'll show you one other just so you guys can see. Here's another one where there's, again, tons of power lines. I got 3 here and 3 here and 4 more over here. Lots that I'd have to get rid of. We'll just hit reduce power lines, and it's going to get rid of all those for me automatically. There you go. And you notice it left the power pole. It's called power lines, not power poles. That would be a separate deal.
Now you can use generative erase.
Well, even on here, because it's this nice easy sky, I can just use the perfect eraser for this one. I'll just paint over it with the perfect eraser. It's not complex. And it'll just fill that in for me just like that.
Perfect.
So there you go. That's why we put it there.
Peasy.
So that it gives you a head start, but you can still use the perfect eraser, the tool you've used forever, to do it all the time.
So. Was that 2 clicks?
Yeah, 2 clicks. 2 clicks to get rid of all that stuff. So
wow.
Pretty darn quick. All right, so those are some of the cool new AI features. And as you know, a lot of the stuff we build today is AI based, but there's also some traditional stuff that we've been working on as well. So let me show you one of the new filters that we added to effects that I really like called Edit Color. Let me grab a photo for us to work on here. And we're gonna go to the Effects tab. We'll go down to Add Filter, and there's right here a new one called Edit Color. Now, the cool thing about Edit Color is it's designed to let you pick a very specific, very targeted color range and then make minor adjustments to it. So it's perfect for people who really care about color, people who want to make modest adjustments. It's not for replacing color. There's another filter called Replace Color if you're trying to change something from red to blue. This is more like I want to take my red and I want to make it really red. And that's what we'll do in this case. So here's how we do it. Let me close a couple things up here so we have some more space to work with. So we can see that whole Edit Color filter. When you start, you see a color wheel, but it's not turned on yet. The first thing I have to do is pick the color that I want to work on. So I'll grab the dropper tool, and I'm going to pick a color. In this case, I want to work with her dress. So I'm going to grab that. As soon as I do that, you'll see a little pie wedge appear that shows me a representation of the color range that I have selected. To make this easier to understand, click on the little eyeglasses. That's going to turn on a visualize mode, which makes everything black and white except for just the color range that we're working on. So you can see how it's picked pretty much just her dress. But if we zoom in a little bit closer here, and we look, oh, it's picked up a little bit of the skin too. There's a little bit of red, a little bit of ruddiness in the skin. So what we can now do is we can adjust that color range to fine tune it to pick just the red in the dress. And I can do that 2 ways. So the first way is over here on the color wheel. There's 2 handles on the outside of the wheel. This sets the hue range, basically how much of a color difference in hue we can allow. So if I want to adjust this, I just pull those handles in, and voila. Wow. You can see just by adjusting that handle a little bit, it's taken that color off. You can also adjust it based on saturation range as well. And that's done by the point and the crust of the pie, if you will. So if I click down here at the point and I pull it up, I'm narrowing it down so it's only going to affect the vivid reds, not the unsaturated reds. So you can adjust that back and forth until you get just the range that you want in your photo, and then go ahead and turn that little preview mode off, and then use the hue, saturation, and lightness sliders to tune your color. In this case, I want to make that dress just a little bit more red. So I'm going to pull it to the left, so I'm adding just a little bit of yellow to it, because if I go this way, it's going to turn it pink. I don't want a pink dress. I want a bright, red, vivid dress, maybe even a little bit darker. There we go. Now we turn this on and off, you'll see the color difference that I've done. It's subtle, and again, that's the goal. We're making subtle, precise adjustments to colors with this tool.
That's awesome, Dana.
Yeah, let me show you one that's a little more complex here. So let's take this photo. Now here's a case where I've got a yellow background and an orange paint. We really wanted that background to be the same color as the paint, right? I think that's what the photographer was going for, but just because whatever gels you have available, you can't get to it. So, but we can do it with edit color. So I can grab that yellow-orange that's in the background. Let's take a look at what's being selected. A lot within the photo that we don't want selected. So we're gonna narrow our color range selection up a little bit so that we're getting just that background color in there. And it's really just that vivid color too. There we go. So now we're picking just that color. It's also getting the color of the orange that's too close to filter out, but I'll show you how we can fix that here in a minute. Then we'll turn that preview option off, and now I can shift that background color so that it's a more vivid orange. And then I can just use a simple brush to paint it off my subject here. Or, because it happens to be on a person, I can cheat. We'll just click on the mask option, and I'm going to say paint it off of people.
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy, just like that.
Nice.
So now I can tune my background to match that foreground element, so they look a lot closer than they did before. Let's turn that on and off so we can see a difference here. So before and after. That looks much more compelling when I can get those colors to match instead of having them be so close together. All right, so I've shown you a bunch of new AI features. I've shown you one new filter and effects. I'm gonna hand it over to Dylan. He's gonna take over and show you the next new filter and effects that we've built.
Yeah, so there's a brand new filter inside of ON1 Photo RAW in the effects tab, and that is the match color filter. It's an awesome filter which allows you to take any photograph. It could be a screen grab from a movie, it could be an edited image from your favorite photographer, and you could essentially match the color and tone and vibe and incorporate it directly into your edit. So let's dive in and take a look at the match color filter. So I have this portrait here, and let's say I want to emulate a look from one of my favorite movies. I love Wes Anderson films, and one of my favorites is Moonrise Kingdom. It has this dreamy, airy, almost faded feel to it. And so what I'm gonna do is I can just head in the effects tab, I'll add a filter, and we can add the all-new match color filter. Now in match color, there's preset styles that you can use that emulate paintings and other photographs, but you can always incorporate your own image that you want to match. So what I'm gonna do is I've just brought in a few different photographs here, but I've brought in a screen grab from that Moonrise Kingdom movie. So I can just select that. You can see it's taking that capture there and it's matching the color to my scene here. Now inside of the match color filter, we can always modify the look and feel by going down to these different sliders at the bottom. So if it's a little bit too intense, we can modify the color there. We can modify the luminosity. I'm just going to pull that back a little bit to make it not so bright. And then I like to bring in a little bit of contrast to make sure things don't look flat within the scene. But you can see it's matching this image, giving it that warm, airy feel, a little bit of a matte look. And if I turn this off and on, I'm matching the color from one of my favorite movies. And you can do that with, like I said earlier, a screen grab from a movie. This could be an edited photograph from your own catalog. This could be an edited photograph from any photographer's catalog. Just a really fun way to incorporate different styles into your imagery with just a single photograph.
Yeah, I think it's a really fun filter. Another thing it's really good for is if you're working on a composite. So you're adding multiple layers together. Let's say you're doing something complex like a manual sky replacement, for example, and you're doing like a sunset. Well, in a sunset, it's gonna have those same warm colors from the sky on your foreground. And if it's not a sunset on the foreground, it's pretty obvious. It looks like you cheated, right? Yeah. Well, if you use match color and you use the color from the sky to apply to the foreground, then the foreground looks like it's a sunset.
It matches.
So then they match.
Yeah.
So, lots of cool things you can do with the match color filter.
Another new feature inside of ON1 Photo RAW that I'm really excited about is the all-new depth mask feature. The depth mask feature allows you to mask in your image based on the depth within your scene. So essentially you can mask things within your foreground and avoid masking things within your background. And it's really helpful for modifying the foreground or background lighting, especially when you want to avoid adjusting your background, but you want to modify the look of your foreground. So I have this photograph here, and you can see that the foreground section and even the car is a little bit dark, but we have a relatively bright sky background. Well, with the depth mask feature, we can actually take our foreground section and we can mask in a little bit of light so that we illuminate just the foreground and just the subject while avoiding the background entirely. So let's just go into our local adjustments. I'll add an adjustment here. And with my local adjustment, to create a depth mask, I'll just go into the masking options. And I'm going to use this little icon here. So I'm going to select that. That's going to take a look at the image and it's going to identify the things in the foreground versus the things in the background. So let's take a look at the mask here. You can see it's identified the car there in my foreground section, but it's avoiding the background. Now, if we need to incorporate more of the mask into the background, we can just go into our level slider here and we can fine tune where that mask is being applied to. So let's say right here, I want to bring in a little bit more of that mask into the middle section of my scene. I can just modify my level slider there and I can bring it into that particular section. If I want it a little more in the foreground, I can just modify this slider. But let's bring a little bit more of it into that middle section there so that we can get that car a little bit more illuminated. So in my local adjustment here, I'm just going to pull up on my midtones a bit. And there we go. You can see I'm avoiding the background entirely while I'm illuminating this foreground section and my subject, the car. So if I turn this off and on, it's doing a great job of illuminating the areas that I want to while avoiding those areas that I need to stay the same because they're essentially a little bit brighter than my foreground section was originally. So it's just a really helpful way to, again, modify specific areas in your scenery based on the depth.
What would I do if I wanted to do the opposite? Let's say I wanted to affect the stuff further from the camera instead of the stuff close to the camera.
Yeah, incredibly easy to do, Dano. So all we have to do is go back into those masking options, and all we're going to do is invert the mask. But because we're dealing with a background, we typically want the background a little bit darker than the foreground so that we create that separation. So all we have to do is just go in, and instead of boosting our midtones, I'm actually just going to darken up the exposure. And we'll actually create another one for our foreground section to illuminate our foreground there. So again, just go in, create a depth mask like that. You can see it's targeting that middle section. I'll bring it back a little bit more. And rather than using a darkening exposure here, we're just going to brighten up our midtones. And maybe our exposure just a little bit there. So now with these two local adjustments, we're modifying the background and the foreground.
Very cool. That's a very different look than you would get by doing it manually, trying to brush it.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So the depth mask feature is an awesome tool for when you need to mask into specific areas of your scene, whether it be the foreground, the middle ground, or the background, or maybe the foreground and middle ground combined. Another new feature inside of the latest version of Photo RAW that I'm really excited about is the all-new canvas dialog. The new canvas dialog feature is really awesome for just creating a specific size canvas for whatever you need to create, whether it be a social media banner, social media post, this could be a video thumbnail, whatever you need, you can create it really easily by using the new canvas dialog. So inside of Photo RAW here, let's say I want to create a video thumbnail with this image. Well, all I have to do is select the photograph, and now I can head up to this File menu, and we're just going to click on New Canvas. You can see the shiny new Create New Canvas dialog. We have a whole lot of options to create a specific canvas for our specific needs. Now, because I'm creating a video thumbnail, I can just go into my category section here, I can select video, and I can just select the 1920 by 1080 because that's typically what YouTube and Vimeo use as their thumbnails. So I can select that there. That will add in those dimensions into this detail section. I'm just going to rename this video thumbnail. You can see I have my width at 1920, I have my height at 1080. I'm going to keep my resolution at 300 so that I have a nice quality to my thumbnail. But with this background contents, we can fill it in with a specific color, we can fill it in with specific photographs. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose selected photos here, and that's going to bring in this image that I have selected and add it into my brand new canvas. Now, because I'm creating a video thumbnail, I want this image to essentially fill the entirety of my canvas. So I'm going to go into this fitting option and I'm going to choose fill. So once I select this OK option here to create that new canvas, voila, it's created a new canvas with those dimensions and it's filled in the dimensions with this particular photograph. So to create my thumbnail, I'm just going to add in a little bit of text to it. But before I do that, I want to darken this section on the corner so that I can lay my text on top of it and make it easier to read. So to do that, I'm just going to use a local adjustment here. We'll just use our paint with color option. I'll just use black here, and I'll just drop this down into the corner here. Nothing too exciting. And we'll just lower the opacity so that we have a little bed for our text. From that, I'm just going to go into my layers. I'll just add some text. Let's just name this 10 travel photography tips. Let's just make this a little bit larger there, and I'll also increase the size of the text. Just like that. And so incredibly fast to just go in, create any canvas size you need for anything you need creatively. And I've just created a quick video thumbnail for my 10 travel photography tips video.
That's very cool. I like that. I think that's going to make it a lot easier to create something of a specific size. Oftentimes in the past, we'd have to open a photo, and that photo is at 72 pixels per inch, and then it makes it, 20 inches by 30 inches. That's not what we need at all. So this way, rather than having to work backwards where you open a photo and then you have to use the crop tool to make it smaller and then export it to a specific size, you can do it up front. You just pick the size you want, add your content to it, and then you're ready to go.
And you have the exact same size.
Yeah, the exact size that you need.
Perfect, yeah. Another new feature that I want to show is the all-new Target Albums feature. This is incredibly helpful for when you're trying to organize a photo project or you're trying to organize images into a specific photo album. You can create a target album and then just add images into it simply by hitting the B key on your keyboard. So let's dive in and take a look at target albums. So I have these 3 different folders here with various images that I captured around Portland and the Portland, Oregon area. And what I want to do is I want to add these images into a specific album so that I can access them really easily later on. To do that, I'm just going to go into my albums pane here. I'm going to create a new album. And let's just name this Portland Photo Project. Now with my Portland Photo Project album, to make it a target album, I can use this Set Target Album option. So when I choose OK, that will add it as an album here, but you can see now I have this little icon, and that's indicating to me that this album is targeted. That way, if I want to add images into that specific album, I can just go into whatever folder I need. I'll grab these architectural shots, and to add these images into that Portland Photo Project album, all I have to do is hit B on my keyboard. And they're right there in that album. So let's add a few more images into that. I'll go to my downtown folder. So these are all images that I've captured downtown Portland or around the downtown area. I'm going to select them and I'll hit B on the keyboard. I'll also grab this Multnomah Falls album, really awesome waterfall near the Portland, Oregon area. B on the keyboard. And just like that, I have all of those images within that Portland Photo Project album without having to click and drag or do anything like that. All I have to do is just hit B on the keyboard and it instantly adds those images into that specific photo album.
That's pretty handy. That's a great way to kind of go shopping for your photos.
Oh, for sure.
And like in your case, you were selecting all, but you don't have to select all. You can just arrow through and hit B on just the photos you're interested in. So if there's only a couple photos in a folder or another album, you can do that as well. Makes it a little easier to go find that best set of photos that you're going to use for some project.
Yeah. Anytime I can use a keyboard shortcut, Daniel, that's what I'm in for.
Now I know there's probably some foreign language users out there who are saying, I don't have a B key on my keyboard. You can go to the shortcuts dialog and you can change that key to any key that you want it to be as well.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
All right, well, I think we have one other feature in Browse we want to show you. This is one that you guys have been asking for I think since Photo RAW came out. So with, little ado, let's talk about stacks.
Hey.
All right, so a stack allows you to take a group of similar photos and nest them together. I'm going to use it here on a portrait shoot to show you how you could take similar portrait photos and put them together for choosing later, but you can also use it with like HDR brackets or panel brackets where you can just put them all together. So to make a stack, you just select a series of photos that are similar that you want to put together. So I'm going to grab these first 4 photos. Very
similar poses.
Same pose. I'm only going to use one of these probably to show the customer. Then I can right click, go to stacks, and there's a new little stack menu. So you can see there's group into stack. There's a keyboard shortcut for that as well that you can use. It's just Control G or Command G. I'm just going to use the group into stack option, and voila, you see those 4 photos are now reduced down to one single photo in here. You notice there's a little 4 on the corner. If I click on that, it'll open up the stack and I can see all the photos that are in it. And let's say that the second one is actually my favorite, the one with the smile. I want that to be the top of the stack. That's kind of the one that we're going to see to represent all of them, the winner. I can just go to the stacks option and say set to top.
Oh, nice.
There you go. Now that's the one that's going to represent all of them. And it's really quick to go through and do it. All I do is I can just select one photo. If I hold down the shift key and I arrow, it'll select the next photo. And then I can just Command G or Control G on my keyboard. And voila, they're grouped together. Let's say these two photos here are pretty much the same. I can group those. These are all pretty much the same series, same background, same shot. Group those together. So you can see how quickly you can actually go through a whole bunch of similar photos, group them together, and then later you can go through each one of those stacks and cull them to pick your best. So then what I would do is I would take one of these series. Let's take like this first series here. I can then open it up, expand it, select those 4, go into compare view, and now I can do that and pick the best one. And of course I can use that same right click and set as top to pick my favorite, or any of my metadata controls I would normally use as I'm comparing and picking my best photos. All right, well there you go. We have shown you, count them, 10 brand new features in Photo RAW 2025. We're super excited for you guys to give it a try. You can go to the website and download a 30-day trial and use every one of these features for free starting today. All right, Dylan, anything else to add?
No, I'm just excited for everyone to start playing with it and have fun with your photographs. Let us know how you are enjoying all of the AI features and all the other new features that are built into the latest version.
Awesome. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for being loyal customers. We'll see you later.